Hey guys. Hey Sparky. Good to see you. Boop boop boop. I should go on at this time more often. How does this work again? Go live with. Oh, cool. So today we're going to take a look at. We're going to review a few things. We're going to remember this. So some things that we're going to talk about. Hey Barnett's, how's it going? So if we remember, everyone says cash is trash, but then when they ask what should I invest in, they have no idea. Hey Dimitri, good to see you again. So if you have any questions, throw it my way. I'm going to talk a bit about money. It's not advice. It's basically some education in terms of how I view things. Hey Jay, good to see you. It's awesome. So money, as you know, is just paper. It's just paper. It has absolutely no value whatsoever. It depreciates like crazy. You can see from this chart that compared to what money was worth 200 years ago, it is literally worth less than 5 cents today. Okay? So money has no value going forward, except for the two reasons you could use money. It only has two good reasons to exist. You can buy groceries with it, and you can pay for shelter. Food and shelter and clothing, so that's important. And it can be exchanged for assets that can make you financially free. That's a big one. That's kind of a big one. So money, which is completely useless except for the fact that it can feed and house you and can set you financially free. Those are kind of the biggies of money. Jason. Hi Jim, does it make sense to have 2 RRSP accounts and 2 TFSA accounts or one of each? That is a great question. Probably involves a lot of math that you can have to talk to an accountant about. For myself personally, my wife and I do have 2 registered savings plans and 2 TFSAs. I think 2 TFSAs definitely for sure. For me, it would be for sure. For RSP, that would depend on a few things. Number one, what are the income levels of my wife and I, and whether or not I have another source of cash flow. If I had another source of cash flow and I didn't need to work, I may or may not have the RSP and lock my money in there, or I may not. I may go with a non-registered. So the RSP depends on my income and whether or not or how big my other source of cash flow was. But for myself and my wife, yes, we have 2 of each. Thanks, Freestyle. Thanks for having me. So let's talk a bit about money. So you can see that most people don't really understand what money is because you're not taught what money is. Money's not real, number one. It is completely not real. Okay? So, hey Diego, good to see you. So money is not real. So the easiest way to understand that money is not real is think of a crash, like the housing crash in America. One day you wake up, your house is worth $200,000 US, and a year later it's worth 60 grand. Where did the 140 go? It went nowhere. It disappeared because it never existed. Because one day society said this is worth 200, and the next time you talk to them, they said it's worth 60. So the money vanished. The same thing happens in wealth creation. When you purchase a share of Apple, they tell you it's worth 20 bucks or whatever, and then 10 years later it's worth 20,000. Where did that money come from? It came from nowhere. So one of the biggest mistakes of school is they try and teach you that money is tangible, that it's real, that you need to trade your life to make it. You don't need to trade your life at all to make it. No one tells you that. And everyone, for whatever reason, trades their life and their time to make money. For example, I am making money now. Am I trading my life for it? I guess so, because time is moving forward, but I am not trading any labor or any effort whatsoever. So stop thinking that money needs to be associated with sacrificing your life. Okay, that's an important concept. The second important concept is the treadmill. Okay, I've talked about this last time. There are two treadmills, okay? There are two treadmills when it comes to life and finances. Unfortunately, school teaches you one treadmill. I'm going to get rid of this picture. We can talk about it. How do you get rid of the pictures anyway? You click this and then what? You say no? Okay. Let's talk about the treadmill because everyone knows about the first treadmill. Everyone knows about the first treadmill because school pushes it on you. Your parents, your teachers, your friends who have gotten it from their parents and teachers push it on you. The treadmill they teach you is go to school, study, get good marks, get a job, work for 50 or 40 years, and you'll have money. That's the treadmill you're on. That treadmill goes to nowhere. The other treadmill is what the wealthy get on. There is a wealthy treadmill, and that refers to the picture that So let's talk about this treadmill that the wealthy are on. They get them richer without having to trade their life. Okay, so I talked about money here. The money line at the bottom, you can see the money line is approaching 1 penny. It's actually approached about 4 cents. So cash has lost approximately 96% of its value compared to what it was in 1802. Okay? 96% of the value for cash. So cash is trash. However, cash has two important characteristics. It pays for food, shelter, and clothing. That's one. And number two, it can set you financially free. So, how does it set you financially free? That's the treadmill that people, that the wealthy are on, and that the poor and middle class have no idea. Everyone's familiar with the poor and middle class treadmill? So the wealthy middle class is this. They take this cash line. Do you see this cash line that's going down to 1 penny, which will probably hit a penny in like my daughter's lifetime? They take the cash line and they throw it into the top line. The top line represents stocks. So I'm not talking about stocks generically. I'm talking about productive assets. What's a productive asset, Jim? I don't know what that is. A productive asset is something that no one talks about in school. I went through 20 years of school and no one told me what a productive asset was. Okay, this is why people get confused. The poor and middle class get confused because they tell you to collect assets like houses. So everyone tells you, buy a house. Make sure you get a house. A house is where it's at. Buy gold, buy Bitcoin. So people are confused because they are assets. What is an asset? Let's go back to what an asset is. You know, some people are even confused the issue. Some of the gurus say assets throw off cash and they put money in your pocket and liabilities take money. Okay, forget all that. Forget all that. What is an asset? An asset is something that can be liquidated for cash. You can liquidate it and get that bottom line. See that bottom line that's going to 1 penny? You can liquidate an asset and get that bottom line, which is cash. That is an asset. Anything that can be transferred or converted into cash. Now, there's two types of assets. Just like there's two types of treadmills. Imagine that. And guess what? The poor and middle class collect the wrong assets and get on the wrong treadmill and they go nowhere and they wonder why. Okay? So, the treadmill of work, trading your life for money, wrong treadmill. Asset, collect the wrong asset. Houses, cars, jewelry, Bitcoin, gold, nowhere. So they collect these assets and they wonder why they're not rich. They collect the wrong assets and they get on the wrong treadmill. You can't do too many things wrong and expect things to go right. So What are those assets I mentioned, like a house, like Bitcoin, like gold, like a car? They're called non-productive. Non-productive means they produce nothing. Nothing comes out of them. You can't sell it for anything. For example, a productive asset, the easiest way to think of a productive asset is a pinball machine. Warren Buffett talked about the most simple asset that's productive back in the 40s or 50s, a pinball machine. You put in some money, the asset is not consumed, and guess what? The owner of the pinball machine gets a quarter, and then they do it again and again. And because it provides a good or service that society wants, it generates money. A productive asset generates cash because it provides a good or service that society wants. If society does not want the good or service that that asset provides, it will not give it money and it will not be productive. Okay? So, remember the fairy tale about the goose and the golden egg? The goose and the golden egg are both assets. Get it? You can take the goose, you can sell it for money. You can take the gold eggs and you can sell that for money. They're both assets. But what the fairy tale didn't tell you was that the goose is considered a productive asset and the gold eggs are the non-productive assets. They're shiny, they look nice, and everyone wants to have them, and that's why they end up killing the goose. The wealthy do the opposite. They couldn't give a shit about the eggs. I don't give a crap about the eggs. I am looking to collect geese. Geese is what I want. They're not as shiny, they're not as pretty, they don't sparkle, but they produce eggs. The wealthy get on the treadmill of collecting geese. Again, like I said, geese are productive assets. So in society, what provides value that society pays for? Businesses. What type of businesses? Apple, Nike, McDonald's, Amazon, Tesla apparently, whatever. So anyway, these are productive assets known as businesses. Rental real estate, you're providing the service of shelter. People pay for that. So these productive assets generate money. Imagine that. What does a collection of productive business assets, where can I find that? Guess what? It's been packaged up for you. It's called a low-fee U.S. index. The S&P, or Standard & Poor 500 index, is a collection of 500 of the most productive companies in America, packaged up for you nicely, so that if you invest in that, it produces what? Golden eggs, known as cash. Okay, so now that you know what a productive asset is and a non-productive asset, you want to collect productive assets. And guess what? When you collect productive assets, you follow the top line. The top line is stocks, which basically means businesses. But guess what? What do productive assets create? They create cash. And what is cash? Cash is trash. Except for the fact that you can convert cash into geese. You can take the cash that your geese are producing to buy more geese. See how that works? So, what are the wealthy doing? They're on the treadmill where they're collecting geese. The geese are spitting out all these golden eggs, and they're quickly trying to redeploy these eggs into productive assets. They're like scrambling. They're like, we need to go here. We need to buy real estate. We need to buy this business. We need to go to commercial. We need to do that service business. So they're shuffling their cash into more businesses. But guess what happens? When they collect more productive assets, what happens to their cash flow? It increases. The treadmill gets faster. They get a torrent of cash, a torrent. So this cash now, again, they have to work even harder. We need to get rid of this stuff. We need to get rid of this. This is why Warren Buffett has collected $100 billion in cash. As he collects these companies, they just keep throwing off money. And it's not about working harder. He just keeps taking the money, and these productive assets keep throwing money at him. If you collect enough productive assets or geese, it's inevitable that you're just going to get a bunch of golden eggs. So that's the treadmill that the wealthy are on and that the poor and middle class don't even know exist. Well, that was fun. enough of my ranting about the school system and why they didn't teach me about money and these stupid treadmills that exist. If you're on the wrong treadmill, you're going to poverty. If you don't understand money, you're going to poverty. And guess what? My teachers didn't tell me that. That really sucks. Okay, let's talk about something else here. Oh, you got some questions here. Yeah, the stock market's made to make money. I mean, if you had to decide, can you imagine, picture this. Let's say that you were in charge of building the perfect capitalistic system to help people escape from middle-class poverty. What would you do? You would probably create a system that generated a line that looks like the chart, the blue line. That line, if anything can tell you, is pretty much a clear indication of how to escape poverty. Look at that. I've collected a bunch of businesses together that if you ride on the back of these businesses, it will carry you to financial freedom. So, why aren't people financially free? That's the question, right? If the system has been created and has existed for 200 years, why aren't people free? Look at this line. If you look at the stock line, every little downturn that you see there, and this is a compressed line, right? This is 200 years and it's compressed. So each of these little dips are catastrophic world events. You got the Cuban Missile Crisis in there. You got World War I. You got World War II. You got the Spanish flu. You have the credit crisis. You have the Iraq-US war. You have 9/11, the Space Shuttle Columbia explosion. You have the Korean War, Vietnam War. You've got a whole bunch of crap that has happened across this line, and guess what? It goes straight up. So why aren't people free? There's two reasons why people don't do it, Brown. That's a great question. Two reasons. The stock market has not taken a penny from anyone. And you can see right there, like my dad was born in 1935. If he just sat on that train in 1935 on that graph, he would have ridden half of that line up, or like a third of it up, and done nothing. But he didn't do that. Why not? I'll tell you two reasons. Number one, ignorance. No one tells you this, okay? When have you ever seen this chart in school? Out of all the hundreds of charts that they show you in school and the thousands of lectures that they give you, have they given you this chart and the commentary that I've given you in 30 minutes? Have they given you this commentary? And how valuable is the last 30 minutes been compared to the 3,000 minutes, 300,000 minutes of charts and graphs and commentary that school gave you? Never, ever. Okay? Because the reason is that school was not designed to create financial freedom. It was designed in 1870, the Education Act in the UK, to create workers that industrialists needed to man their factories. So, the industrials worked with the government to create a universal education system in order to get workers to work in their plants. Because before then, people generally worked in the farm because society was an agricultural-based society. We primarily were farmers. We worked at home, we got up at the crack of dawn, did our chores, collect the eggs, clean the stalls, did what we needed to do. But then there was a change. There was a change into the Industrial Revolution where we needed people to start making other things. Tools, cars, services. So then the business people who started these things said, we need more workers. We can't have 99% of the population as farmers. They're not useful to us like that. So they worked with the government, established in the UK, actually before in Prussia, but after in the UK in 1870 as the Educational Act of 1870, which led the UK to the mandatory path of a government-based, government-mandated school board system. And guess what? The school board system was designed not to educate based on money. You will never, ever, from back then till now until I die, you will never be able to introduce any significant financial literacy curriculum in the school. That just won't happen. It is self-defeating to the country. It would destroy the economy because people would all of a sudden not be, like, they wouldn't want to be employees. Like, why would they want to trade their life for money? Like, who would want to do that? Like, no one picks that. It's just sort of like no one tells you there's any other way. So we needed that system in order to man the plants, which was fine. And so the education system kind of split up. It split up to the rich and the poor. So the church actually had dominion over the poor. So they didn't want the government to meddle in who they spoke to. So they set up 2 educational boards, but I digress. So they set up 2 boards, but now if you look at the curriculum for both the Catholic school or the government program, they're very similar. You're learning to become a contributing member of our economy, which is fine. So number one, the one reason is ignorance. Why people haven't become financially free. Ignorance is number one, right? That's not going to stop anytime soon, okay? So ignorance is up to the individual to fix because the system around you is not going to help you there. That's number one. Number two is fear. Temperament. Fear. Even if you knew that this system existed, and even if you knew that the stock market has gone straight up for 200 years, even if you knew that every bear market ends in a bull market, and if you just sat tight, you would come out roses, people get scared. The average annual return of the stock market has been 10%, but the average return of the individual investor is in the 4s. It's less than half because of fear. Fear. You buy and sell, you get panicked, and I don't blame people. You know, in retrospect, it looks silly. Like, look at these little dips here in the stock market line. That's World War II. Someone might say, when they are facing World War II, America is going to end, the Japanese are going to invade and take us over, and I'm going to sell. And that's purely rational. That seems reasonable. That's a reasonable, rational reason to sell. The world is ending. How do you know? We're in a world war. But guess what? The world didn't end, and the stock market powered up. You know, it's reasonable to say, hey, during the credit crisis, every financial institution is dying. Credit is frozen. Businesses are going bankrupt. Everyone's unemployed. I think we're going towards the next Great Depression. I'm going to sell. That's completely rational. That is completely rational and totally understandable. I am getting out now while the getting's good. And guess what? It's never different this time. The world didn't end. And guess what? The last 10 years have been the strongest bull market in history. So, fear has taken money and ignorance has taken money from individuals. That's right. So we had the Spanish flu, we had all these issues, and the market keeps powering forward. So as I talked before, this is a book that people should definitely read, in addition to my own, of course. That's a little plug for my book. So I have a book called Financial Freedom Now. I don't recommend people read that. Well, you learn a lot because a lot of the stuff I put in there, I wish school would have told me. Like, I basically put in my book, which is over almost 300 pages, all the information that school should have damn taught me, but they didn't bother because, again, like I said, it was not in their interest to teach me that stuff because they wanted me to contribute to the economy. The best way to contribute to the economy is convert me into a worker. So, and I did that for a while. There's nothing wrong with trading your life for money. You got to start somewhere. I did it. I did it for many years. So, but what is wrong is to get on the treadmill and just stay there. Like, don't just stay there. I mean, they introduced you to the treadmill. They built the treadmill. They pushed you on the treadmill, but at least look around. I mean, you should at least notice that there are some people that aren't on the treadmill. Like, I mean, if you look at 100 people, you'll notice that there's one or two people that aren't on the treadmill. Or if you look around and you see 100 people on the treadmill, over time, you'll see a couple of them get off. So you should kind of figure that out on your own. So ignorance is going to have to be like your own thing to figure out. So my book, Financial Freedom Now, you click on the link on my profile, that's where the book is. It has everything that I wish my teachers and my parents told me, but they couldn't because they don't even know it. Because if they knew it, they wouldn't be working. Like, why would you work if you knew? And the second book you should read is this one. Boop. How come it's so big? Anyway, it's called The Little Book of Common Sense Investing by John Bogle. He is the inventor, the founder of Vanguard. Oh, hey Serge, good to see you. Oh, you should be working. Why are you on this podcast? What are you trying to be? You're trying to become financially free or something? What's wrong with you? No, I'm just kidding. Your employer's not going to like that. No. Okay. Anyway, so The Little Book of Common Sense Investing by John Bogle. He got fed up of the system too. That's the thing, right? So John Bogle was another person who's passed away, unfortunately. He got fed up of the system that used the stock market to sell people on trading in and out of their stocks. Okay, so John Bogle got fed up because you see the stock line and how I told. So my perspective here is that it goes up all the time. Just stay the course. So what people did was, because it does go up and down, what some people who aren't as they're ethically challenged. So what they would do is they would sell you on the idea of stocks when it's going up, and then sell you on the idea of selling them when it goes down. And so they would make money doing this, and then they would sell the idea that they had a guy who knew a guy who worked at a fund company, that if you put your money with them, you'll make bank and you don't have to worry so much, right? So John Bogle got fed up of that system of the little guy getting screwed. Okay, so that's the first one that he created, the index fund. He basically said, listen, I'm tired of the little guy getting screwed, which is why I wrote my book. I am tired of people going through school, which is why I am teaching I'm going to go into that bit later about my daughter. So I'm tired of people getting screwed, so I am going to not only write a book, I'm going to go even better. I'm going to create a company called Vanguard. I am going to create a package called a low-fee US index, so no one could scam them. It's going to be the lowest fees in the industry. They just have to buy it and forget it, and nobody's going to come in and sell them nothing. And everyone thought he was an idiot. He's like, how are you going to make money? No one's going to buy this thing. We have bigger marketing budgets. But people bought it because people were tired of bullshit. Eventually, people will see through bullshit, and they'll say, listen, this is low fee. I don't need to sell in and out. You can't come to my house and keep driving me from greed to fear, and skimming my money. I'm going to invest in this index and forget about it. And he invented the index fund in '74. Right? So there it is. And that goes to me about my daughter. So the challenge I face is, obviously my daughter needs to go into the, I hope so. My daughter is going to school because obviously they have to go to school. It's the law. I think in 1896 they made it mandatory. So my job as a parent is to put context to what the school system is teaching. So school is not all bad. I don't want to say school is bad. And I had really nice teachers and they taught me a lot of things. And they really taught me a love of learning, which I really carry to this day. So without the love of learning, I probably wouldn't have gotten where I am. All I'm saying is that they have a few blind spots. So now that I'm aware of where the blind spots are, I can help my daughter identify them, put context, and then steer her in a way that won't lead her down into my problem, which was 30 years of oh, I didn't know it was that bad. It took me decades, decades. I started when I was 14, but it took me decades to figure out, if someone would have told me right off the bat, it would have been a lot better. Anyway, So let's talk about some other things here. So what is the most important, and this is for all you people who are younger than me, which is probably most people. I'm approaching 50, so this is your time. My time is still here, but it's not going to be the same as a 22-year-old's time. So what is the most important? The most important. So seeing this graph here, where is that? There it is. Seeing this graph and now knowing that productive assets are located in the top line in a low-fee U.S. index, what do you think is the most important fundamental way to become financially free? Is it the rate of return? Is it how much money you have to invest? Is it your regular contribution amount? Is it your age? Obviously, if you have a ton of money, you can still lose it if you don't understand that you need to be focusing on geese and not golden eggs. But the fundamental determinant of success, because this is a compounding asset, is time. Time. You can see here, all these lines are following the same path. It is a geometric sequence, a geometric series. A geometric series means that it's just going to look like a hockey stick. All right, think of a hockey stick, right? The later you get on, it's going to take longer for you to ramp up, or an investor to ramp up their wealth. So no matter what you start with, I don't really care what people start with. They can start with $100 a month, start with, $1,000 a month, 10,000, whatever. You're gonna be significantly better if you start early. Is there a question there? Time in the market. That's right. So Sparky's got it. Time in the market. You start at 25. Your end result. And if it was linear, you would think, oh, he just has because he started 10 years earlier, he's just gonna have 10 years more. It's not like that. It's a hockey stick. So someone who starts at 25, you can see here, they invested $5,000 every year for 10 years and then they stopped. So they started at 25, they invested until 35, and they stopped. And they would have way more money than anybody who starts after that. They will have almost $800,000 having not contributed a penny more after the age of 35. And imagine if they kept going after 35. Or imagine if they increased 5,000 to 6,000. So you can see the hockey stick favors early start. Early start is what the hockey stick favors. Okay? So that's, again, these are probably the two graphs that are the most important for you to see in school. And did anyone at school get shown this graph and this graph and explained why they're important? No, of course not. So if you are in your 20s, you are sitting pretty. I am telling you right now. As long as, like I said, the stock market has not taken a dime from anyone. Hasn't taken a dime from anyone. So you can see here, as we've gone through like Spanish flus and world wars, that the only people that got shook out of the top line are people who got scared. That is it. All right, so let's see here. All right. Yeah, it's too bad, Aiden, that school wants to show you other things. So they want to teach you. So the interesting thing is, does anyone know, or anyone who looked at the Education Act of 1870 when school was when the industrialists started working with the UK government in 1870 to set up the Education Act of 1870, what the goal of school was? So they wanted school to be set up and controlled by government boards to cultivate certain attributes. Guess what those attributes are? Wasn't math, wasn't English or literacy, it wasn't skills of any sort. It was literally socialization. So they wanted people to understand punctuality. So that's why they set school certain times. You have recess at certain times, you start at certain times, you have homeroom break that lasts a certain amount of time, you finish at a certain time. So punctuality was one of the lessons that they needed to learn. Number two was to be docile. So if you remember what I said earlier in the video, before the Industrial Revolution, we were an agricultural-based society. So people woke up on their farm, they took orders from their parents, their grandparents, their uncles, their aunts, their mothers, and that's how society worked. So now you are required in the industrial age to take orders from someone who is not a family member. You go into a factory or a plant, and the person telling you what to do is no longer related to you. So that was a big deal back then. So they taught social skills and how to get along with your future managers. All right, so number one, punctuality. Number two, how to get along with people who are not your family, socialization. And number three, what they taught was, looks like someone blew up a tire there. Number three is what they taught was, what was I going to say? Punctuality, socialization, and not to be drunk. It sounds weird, but yes, to be sober. So they stressed a lot of virtues. Don't sleep late. Don't drink a bottle of vodka on the job or even off the job. We want you sober in the factory. So, funny enough, that's what they taught. Very interesting. Okay, let's talk a little about this thing here. Let's talk about real estate. So real estate is a very interesting thing. Oh, actually, no. Let's keep it on stocks today. We're talking about stocks. So a lot of people ask me, Jim, why don't you invest in the Canadian index? Why do you always talk about the low-fee U.S. index? I've always loved the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar is my favorite. I personally love living in Canada. I love being Canadian. I don't have any problems with Canada. But let me tell you, when you're a Canadian and you have US dollars, you're not doing too bad. If it was the other way and I was American and I was making Canadian dollars, I would be sad panda. So I like US dollars. I am pro-America, so keep that in mind. I have American bias, so you have to keep that in mind when you're listening to me talk. So why don't I invest in a Canadian index? Number one, the Canadian index is represented, you can use the TSX, Toronto Stock Exchange. So the allocation of the TSX looks like this. You can see here that the TSX is heavily weighted into financials, our big five banks. We're not like America where we have hundreds of banks, okay? We have like big five banks and we have second tier lenders, Meridian or whatever. I can't name them because I don't work in banking, but financials is huge, and materials, energy, and industrials. Specifically, oil, forestry, agricultural, whatever. So materials, energy, industrials, natural gas, we're huge in literally those areas. So you can see it's very concentrated, right? The American economy is much more diffuse. They have technology, they have healthcare, they have real estate, they have energy as well. They have banks, again, but it's not the big five. They have hundreds of banks. They have utilities and everything in between. Consumer disposables like the McDonald's and the Coca-Colas of the world, or Wrigley's, Gillette. So they're all over the place. We're a little bit more concentrated. Canada is a capitalistic system, but it's more like an oligopoly. So we have a few businesses in every sector that control most of the business. So we have the illusion of choice without completely destroying choice. Dr. Rami, I do not invest in the Canadian market. I am open to investing in the Canadian market. everything has a price. I love Canada and the US. So if something happens in Canada where my US dollars and my Canadian dollars can be put to good use, buying those productive egg-laying geese, I would be up for that. So you can see here, we're very concentrated. And let's take a look at this. Let me show you something else. This. So this is the index earnings change mapped on to the price of oil. You can see here that the productivity of our index, not surprisingly, is somewhat correlated with the price of oil. So when someone asks me, would you invest in a Canadian index, I would have to ask, what is the future price of oil? Because that would probably determine how well I do. You can see here, it's not perfect. It is not a one-to-one correlation. And Dr. Rami, why do all medical studies show correlation and not causation? Huh? Why is that? It's all correlated. It's correlated with this bacteria, but we can't say it's a cause. Do they say causes anymore in medical literature? Anyway. So you can see here that the earnings of the index is highly correlated with the price of oil. So that is probably the two reasons I don't invest in a US index. All right, so again, going back to index investing, this is the book. So when I started, I did not index invest. I will tell you that now. I picked individual stocks. That's a mistake. It hasn't hurt me too much, but it is a mistake. The fact is that the index is just very easy, and the problem the index has, the only problem the index has is if you invest in the index and you don't have the temperament, you get scared off and you sell. The line doesn't break, guys. You see this line? It's a straight line. It doesn't break. You're not gonna go to zero, okay? So I have picked individual stocks, and I'll tell you, if you're going to pick individual stocks, I will give you the 3 books that you need to read. Okay, so the people who are dead set, like, no, Jim, I can beat the average. I can beat the average index. Keep in mind, by the way, that the index, the LOFI US index, scores in the 98th percentile, right? Picture taking a test like the MCATs, LSATs, GRE, and scoring in the 98th percentile, where all you needed to do was buy the books and don't sell them. Imagine scoring in the 98th percentile, I'll say it again, scoring in the 98th percentile in the LSATs, the GRE, the MCATs, by just buying the books and not selling them. You don't need to study, you don't need to open them, you don't need to do anything. That is a LOFI US index, folks. You buy it and you will beat 98%. You will score in the 98th percentile of investors. And then, of course, you get Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger and Philip Fisher, and all those guys will destroy you, but that's okay. You're doing okay. So, I will tell you which books you need to read if you want to pick individual stocks, if you are dead set. Number 1, how come I can't shrink the picture? I guess I got to get better pictures. Dr. Rami, now that you're talking about picking beaten up sectors, that is a different game than picking individual stocks, because then the next question would be, why not go to a beaten up sector like travel or hospitality and start picking the individual stocks? Like, why stop at the sector? Like, why not just keep picking the ones that have the highest chance of turnaround, right? So it's a dangerous game. It's an interesting wormhole to go down. I don't recommend it. You can spend a lot of time. I'll tell you right now, it's a lot of time. I picked individual stocks when I was in the 90s and in the early 2000s. I stopped probably 2005, 4 or 5. I would not recommend it. It is a lot of work. If you think, and I went through engineering, so I know what a lot of work is, and it's a lot of work. And not only is it a lot of work one time when you're trying to find the stock, It's a lot of work every quarter because you're dissecting the business all the time. Because if that business has any problems whatsoever, it will materially affect your wealth because you've just bought that stock, right? So as far as the US index is concerned, the only way that the US index can materially affect your wealth is if you hold on to it and it goes and it keeps going, or the US is destroyed by another global power and completely annihilated. So you got to play the odds a bit on that one. So the interpretation of financial statements, just like in medicine, where you kind of need to know what's inside the body to treat the body, you kind of need to know how to interpret the financial statements of a business. Because if you don't know what you're looking for in a business, there is no way to determine if it's healthy, sick, or something in between. Okay? So this book is key. It's old. They've reprinted it. So when you read this book, it's written by Benjamin Graham, who is the mentor of Warren Buffett. And this book is very old, so you'll see references to railroads and all that industrial stuff. But the theory and the practice holds true. Talks exactly, and I'll tell you what his idea is. His is his book here. So he takes this book, The Interpretation of Financial Statements, and then he uses the knowledge of how to interpret financial statements to describe his method. There's two methods to invest successfully in stocks, right? Benjamin Graham taught one method, which Warren Buffett has adopted, and other investors like Greenblatt and other investors that are super billionaires right now have used to create wealth. And that is outlined in The Intelligent Investor. And I'll tell you what The Intelligent Investor does right now. It's a very simple method. Simple does not mean easy. Remember, simple, not easy. Simple. It is a simple method. And the reason why he discussed this method was because it was simple to learn. And he was a professor. So the method that was described by him is simple for him to teach to his students. And this is what the method was. Benjamin Graham bought companies where their asset value was similar to their stock price. You understand what I'm saying? I'll say it again. Benjamin Graham bought companies where the assets on their balance sheet were equal to the price of the business. Or less. When the assets are the same price or more. So let's put that in context. Let's say you wanted to buy a taxi. There are thousands of taxis spread ahead of you. They all produce roughly the same amount of money, right? They all generate income per year. They all have expenses. They all generate revenue. They all have loans on them, whatever. They're all the same. The only difference is that 1 in a million of those taxis has in its trunk $100,000. It has assets of $100,000 in the trunk. It has wads of cash in the trunk. So Ben Graham's method was to go through all the companies in the stock universe, all these taxi cabs, and keep opening up trunks until he found that stash of cash. Because when he buys that taxi, he basically gets the business for free. It's free. As soon as an investor buys that cab with its cash flow, let's say if it makes $10,000 a year or whatever, and buys that taxi, it buys the same business, $10,000 a year, but it gets that $100,000 in cash in the trunk. And they paid $100,000 for it. So what happens when you pay $100,000 for a business that has $100,000? You got the business for free. The business for free. It's a free business. That is what Benjamin Graham basically taught. He actually went even more extreme. He saw a taxi selling for $100,000 and he would look for the trunk that had $200,000. Like he would make it so ridiculous and he would find those things. Like that's a ridiculous thing. I don't know if it's ridiculous that the strategy was ridiculous or that he actually found stuff like that, right? So Warren Buffett adopted this method. in the 40s, in the 30s and 40s. He adopted this method. So he went around uncovering assets on the balance sheet, and he looked at the stock price, and if the assets were massive compared to the company, he would buy the company. And that's how he started. He would call this method the cigar butt approach. Cigar butt meaning, when is a cigar most valuable? A cigar is most valuable when it's not smoked, right? It is completely intact. You get the full experience. You light it up. You enjoy it for like an hour or two. That's the cigar. But when he said it's the cigar butt approach, that means there's almost like someone has already smoked. The business has been running for decades. It's been smoked down to like a little nub. And if you can just pick it up, you get it for free. You don't have to pay for the cigar. You found it on the ground. You get a few puffs for free. That means you make some money off of it, and then you liquidate, sell, get rid of it. That is why he called it the cigar butt approach. Now, Warren Buffett has since transitioned from that approach because he says, number one, Graham's method only works for small sums of money. And of course, we can only assume what Warren Buffett thinks is a small sum. I'm sure whatever he thinks is a small sum is actually a significant sum. But what he's saying is that it doesn't work for the amount of money that he's trying to invest. He's trying to invest tens of billions of dollars, so there's not enough companies in the universe of companies that would make it worthwhile for him to look for this stuff. He might find like $1 billion or even $500 million worth of these opportunities, and it wouldn't make a dent. It would be too much work, and it wouldn't be meaningful for him because he's trying to deploy tens of billions. So number one, the cigar butt approach is not good for large sums of money, but it's still good for us. Like I said, I used this in the 90s, and you make money with this method. It's a simple method, not easy. Can you imagine looking through thousands of taxi cabs for that one taxi cab? It's a simple method, but it's not easy. But it's almost guaranteed. Because why is it guaranteed? Because the cash already represents the whole business. The cash already represents you actually haven't paid for anything, right? So that's why it works so well. I'm not going to go into the second method because it's ridiculously hard. I'll show you the book, but I'm not going to go into the method. I've studied the second method, and it's ridiculous. It is literally like going from checkers to 3D chess. If you want to play checkers with picking individual stocks, the intelligent investor and the interpretation of financial statements is where you start. And if you think that's hard, that means you think checkers is hard. And 3D chess is this thing right here. Philip Fisher, which is actually what Warren Buffett does now. So Philip Fisher made a book called Common Stocks, Uncommon Profits, summarizes how to deploy large sums of money. So Warren Buffett likes this. He can deploy tens of billions of dollars into the businesses that this method finds and make an ungodly amount of money. Okay? So Philip Fisher has the second method of making money buying individual stocks, which is like 3D chess compared to the intelligent investor, which is like checkers. I'm going to go back now to getting rid of that. I think this was produced a bit better. I don't know anything about YouTube. I'm doing this for fun, really. I'm providing probably a lot of value for no revenue whatsoever. Maybe I should go to YouTube. I don't even know how. Maybe I should talk to someone to help me with that. If anyone knows how to put me on YouTube, great, because all I'm doing is cutting and pasting my stuff there. And by the way, this video, I think live, will actually be on my channel. I think it's under the IGTV tab. So if you've missed any portion of this stream, you can go onto my account and click around, and I think it's saved there. So you can actually rewatch it. And I did one earlier before as well. So you can actually see that as well. I don't go on YouTube because I hate editing and I don't know how to do it. That's just to be honest there. I mean, I just got on like TikTok 8 months ago and then Instagram maybe 6 months ago. So figuring it out as I go. All right. Tell me. I would love to make this work. Yeah, sure. Reach out to me. Anyway, so I'm going to cut off the stream there. I talked a lot about a lot of things: money, the education system, stock market, index, picking individual stocks. So again, go to my account. If you like the content, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe. I also have a link in my profile where you can buy the book, which again covers everything I wish school would have taught me. It's called Financial Freedom Now. It took me like decades to learn, and I'm still learning now because I had to deprogram myself from everything they taught me. So hopefully that book will help someone deprogram earlier. That'd be the dream. And yeah, so find me on TikTok, on Instagram, and reach out to me anytime. I try and answer all my questions. I miss a lot of them. Get a lot of questions. So I try and do the ones that I can. So love you guys. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon. I think I'll do another live because this live is actually great with all the pictures and stuff. It's awesome. All right. Take care, guys.